Want to advertise your business in a cost-effective way? It's time to give podcast advertising a try. Research shows a high rate of podcast listeners made a purchase as a result of an ad they heard on a podcast. Visit podbean.com/brands to launch a cost-effective podcast advertising campaign in minutes. That's podbean.com/brands.
Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:04 p.m. Central, and we got Wham here with us. Wham's representing, and tonight's guest, I'm going to say your names once, and then I'll let you guys say it, especially if I mess up something. I meant to ask you that before we went live, but Dr. David Bettenhausen and Carla Bongini Kidd.
Very good.
That was perfect.
There you go.
Good. I'll say David and Carla from now on.
Yeah.
It's great to have you guys here. And I know also I want to say to Wham, I know Venus retrograde, I think, is ending on the 29th.
It's ending. And then Mercury retrograde ends, I believe, February 4th.
Okay. So as any of that, I know people go crazy about Mercury retrograde, but when it happens to you personally, Wham, do you think something happens? Do you think it's crappy or whatever?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not affected by Mercury retrograde that much personally, but it does seem sometimes as if I notice weird stuff around me, like just where I work, I do data security and privacy for an educational institution in New York. And, like the first Monday after Mercury went retrograde, we had just a catastrophe. It was like, and then over the last 2 weeks in particular, there have been innumerable network problems and phone problems and stuff that they couldn't really track down. They just had to sort of like reboot systems, or reinstall things. It wasn't like there was a problem that was causing it. So, it didn't affect me that much, but, and then yesterday when I went into work, it was really cold overnight. Was in the single digits or below zero, and our entire building had lost heat. So we had no heat, and we didn't get it until like noon. So it was pretty cold in there. And that was just because some regulator, went off. So I don't know. I mean, I guess, I don't know if that's because of Mercury retrograde. I personally, like I said, don't experience that much stuff. Yeah. I just use that energy to try to finish things that I haven't been able to get done. So, because that's what you're kind of supposed to do with it. I experienced a lot more with the Venus retrograde personally than the Mercury retrograde. So, this year anyway.
Just noticed someone, Andrew Aloha, was talking about Mercury retrograde in chat. And Dave and Carla, it's great to have you here. I guess first off, tell us what started you on this journey of spirituality and past lives. What was the catharsis, the catalyst?
Well, we'll try to give you a little short story, Jeff and Wham. So I'm a physician, and Carla has been my office manager for over 25 years. And we started electronic medical records in our office. Now, Wham may think all the technical stuff she does with security is easy, but when we switched to electronic medical records, it was a nightmare. And it was a whole new world because we had been paper and pen or dictation forever. And we certainly had computers that we did billing and those things with, but using them for patient care was completely different. And so during the training in the first 3 to 6 months of it, I literally got up and was on the computer at 5, and I was getting off the computer at 8 o'clock at night, trying to see the same number of patients, trying to do normal things. And I became unbearably grouchy and almost impossible to deal with. And Carla has been my best friend for a long time. And she just couldn't quite take the grouchy person I was becoming.
Yeah, so I suggested to Dave that we either call a counselor for him or we try meditation. I was reading in a very unlikely publication one day an article in AARP magazine, of all things, about the benefits of meditation. And, there's many. But I thought, well, maybe if we can do this in an office, it will be more helpful. We won't be so stressed. I got shingles in the middle of it all. Dave was a nervous wreck. I like to say he's normally a cross between, Yogi Bear and Barney or Fred Flintstone, but he was just so cranky. So I went into the office and I said, okay, do you want me to call a counselor, or what do you think about doing meditation as an office? And he said, all right, I'll try meditation. So we decided that that's what we would do as an office. We had a small office. There were a couple of other girls, and we had to come in like a half an hour earlier in the morning to get going before the patient started. So
the first day we came in, we all meditated together. It was peaceful and it was calming. And part of it was I shut the computers off, didn't look at a phone, didn't look at anything for 30 minutes while we meditated. So when I got up, I felt better already. I thought, this is great. Just shutting the computer off for that much time gave me a moment to center, and I thought I could go ahead and take care of patients again. The next day was kind of peaceful. We saw some colors and we all talked about it, and nobody else wanted to come in early the next day, and I didn't blame them. But Carla still came in, and we played some calming music and started to meditate. And while I was meditating, I felt great. And then we heard the patients coming in, so we jumped up and started running down the hall. But I had to share with Carla that I had an experience. So I walked in and I said, Carla, you'll probably think that I've lost my mind, but I think I was speaking to your mother. Carla's mother died 20 years before that of brain cancer.
And you never met her.
And I had never met her. I said, but this woman who looked like you, who had just same eyelashes from a side view, she was so jovial and she was happy, and she looked at me and she showed me a shoe. And Carla ran over to the computer and Googled shoes of some kind.
I actually Googled ballroom dancing shoes, and like 60 or 70 pair appeared on the screen. And I said, okay, which shoe? And he went over and he pointed to the exact shoe. And my sister also worked in the office at the time, and we looked at each other and I thought, how could he possibly have guessed that out of everything? My mother was a ballroom dancer. She wore a certain type of small pump, open toe sandal for dancing, and also when she went to church or dressed up. And for him to get that exact guess out of all of those, it got our attention.
And they kept wanting to meditate and talk to their mother, and we had patients to see, and it went okay that day, but we decided we had to keep meditating because this was so interesting. Well, a few more days went by, and I was meditating, and suddenly I had this memory about running on a beach in Boston. And I mentioned the memory to these guys, and they were like, when were you in Boston? And I had to explain, well, Carla's from Boston originally, and I was from Nebraska and Iowa. And at that time I was living in Nebraska. My dad, in 1962, when I was 3 years old, went to graduate school in Boston. And so he took us to Boston, and one day he took us to the beach. And when we were on the beach, I was running and screaming, and I remembered the Ferris wheel in the background, and I remembered the roller coaster and little shops on the side. And as I was running, this little girl ran over and pushed me down, sat on my chest, and gave me a kiss on the forehead. She jumped up, she yelled, "Stop bothering my family." She put both hands on her hips. And I looked at her with wearing this little two-piece blue ruffled bathing suit with a little pot belly. And Carla stopped me right in the middle of telling her the memory.
And I said, that was me. And I remembered it. I didn't need meditation to remember. My family was, the good Catholic family. I was the youngest of 6 girls. My parents were always splitting up. but never quite got divorced. But that particular day, they were back together and they rented 2 cabs. We were not well off. We didn't have a car. And all 7 of us went to the beach that day.
Yeah. So I had this memory in 2014, and I hadn't ever talked about it, never with these guys, never anywhere. I didn't even remember that I knew this, but I found it during meditation. So we continued to meditate because we thought this is very interesting that Carla and I met each other one other time, because we didn't meet again until I was 36. And so we kept meditating, and then suddenly I had another memory. And while I was meditating, I'm standing in a dark alley, and I look across the alley, and there I see Carla. Now I say it's Carla. Now she doesn't look exactly like Carla now. She was younger,
Thinner.
Yeah. She still had the same steel blue eyes, but she didn't look exactly the same. But she was wearing a little gold band, and she had a fringed skirt, and she looked like a flapper. And I'm staring at her in this alley, and suddenly there's 2 large flashes. And then I get hit in the chest, and I realize I've been shot. And I'm thrown back on the ground, and I know I'm laying there and I'm dying. And I go, and so I'm telling Carla this story, and she's like, okay, maybe you're a little off. Where did you get this memory from? Because we know the one in 1962 is real. So the next day, I'm meditating again, and I get more of the story. And I realized that I'd met this flapper at a wedding in Chicago in 1925. And that at the wedding, she was the wedding singer. I realized that I invited her out to breakfast the next day, and we went for a walk along the coast of Chicago, and she started to tell me about her life story. And so I shared the life story with Carla. I said, this woman told me she was Ruby Donaldson. She was born in Bullock, Georgia, that her father's name was James, and she moved to Chicago to become a dressmaker and a singer, and that she sang at a speakeasy named DeAndre's for a man named Angelo. And the wedding that I went to was to the wedding of a man named Angelo. And it occurred at what auditorium?
Ashland Auditorium.
Ashland Auditorium in Chicago, yeah. And so I told her all these things. And Carla's very curious, so she went out and ran out and started researching.
Well, not so much, just curious. I wanted proof, if there was proof available. So I got onto Ancestry.com, and I did find Ruby Donaldson, born in 1904 in Bullock, Georgia, to James and Anna Donaldson. She was one of 11 children. And then I found pictures of some of the family and the parents and birth certificates, censuses. Then I found newspaper articles from a wedding in Chicago, January the 10th, 1925, Angelo Jenna to Lucille Spinola. Married at Ashland Auditorium, over 3,000 mobsters were there. Found a picture of the wedding cake. Upon doing further investigation, found out that Angelo Jenna was the head mobster in the North End, Little Italy in Chicago right before Al Capone. But I didn't know that. So I called Dave and I said, I corroborated what you told me. I found these things.
And it's kind of interesting because Carla and I were both raised Catholic, and certainly the thought that having a past life was not something that was normal in our conversations. Carla might have been a little more open-minded than I was, but this sent us on a search because we wondered, how come we met twice in this life, and now we have this memory of 1925? And so every time I was meditating after that, I would try to go to and try to remember this memory. And so we were sitting there in the room. I was trying to remember the memory. I started to tell her more of the story. And as I started to tell her the story, I literally became this man, J.J. Wright, as I'm speaking. And Carla literally became Ruby Donaldson. And Carla started to finish the sentences. and had the same memory at the same time, which really made us freak out because these two had a relatively emotional weekend there that wasn't fling. Yes, that wasn't in our normal relationship.
Yeah.
We'd been best friends, but it hadn't ever gone that way. And so we both jumped up because we were so nervous, and we ran down the office, started seeing patients. But it started us doing lots of research. We started reading about reincarnation. We started looking at the research by Ian Stevenson and Jim Matlock and Jim Tucker out of the University of Virginia's Department of Perceptual Studies. We found the studies on about 2,500 kids who had spontaneous past life memories. We kept meditating. We kept doing research. We started reading about, reincarnation in Hindu and in Buddhist thought, and more research. We found 33% of the world believes in reincarnation. We found that 20% of the Christians believed in reincarnation, and we kept meditating, and we kept getting more memories. And pretty soon we had 42 past lives for me, and we had 34 for Carla, and we had found each other in 29 of the same lives.
It's definitely fascinating, and I'm open to past lives. I mean, I guess, and I'm familiar with Brian Weiss. How did that come about? How did you get hooked up with him?
Well,
I had read all of his books, so I had a little bit of information already about it, but we wrote our first 2 books before we decided we were going to go train with Dr. And Mrs. Weiss in New York at the Omega Institute. And we spent a week with them. People were there from all over the world. It was so awesome because we were seeking out people that had similar experiences. Well, we had a room full of people with similar experiences. So that was so nice because living in, Flag City, USA, it's not a subject that you can talk about with most people. But here, people were sent from all over the world. One particular girl was from Chile. She was a social worker at a hospital. Lots of hospitals from other places around the world send their people to learn past life regression. And in her case, it was to use on end-of-life patients. So it was absolutely phenomenal. And of course, while we were there, we regressed people from all over the place. And we found people that we had past lives with during that time. So it was really a great experience.
I've had people tell me some past lives of mine, and I've heard a Viking drowning. Some lady once told me I was Vlad the Impaler reincarnated. I have trouble with that one. I mean, I've heard different stuff. I mean, I'm open to it. I think there's something to it, but when it comes to confidence and when you find out the information, I guess that's what I would have a problem with, is being confident enough to believe and trust the info that I'm being said and, go with it. Was that a struggle for you? I mean, how do you deal with that? Because, you have to be very confident when you say these things that these are what you are. And from spiritual experiences, and I guess that, intuition, and it just seems people, I guess, are stronger than that than I am on a lot of levels. So I guess I'm just trying to understand it.
Well, and what really happened for us is our first book was The Gift of Past Lives with Mother, Isabella, God, and Elizabeth. And it's very specific that it's Mother, Isabella, God, and Elizabeth because we first met Carla's mother, or I did. And then I met this spiritual being who told me her name was Isabella. And Isabella, during all of this time, started to share bits and pieces of information. And part of it was that she said that she had been my spirit guide and had been with us for 6,000 years. Now, I thought maybe still I was a little bit crazy. But after Carla was able to find specific past lives that we could at least corroborate,
yeah.
And we found another life where we found the name that I thought I was existed. and so that was exciting, and that was in the United States. And then we started finding other information, and some of the information was part of the story. You know, we'd watch almost the story as it's unfolding, and as the story would unfold, we found out something like the second life that we ever had was in a place called Thrace. Now, I never knew Thrace existed.
Excuse me.
Thrace is an area which is in now Bulgaria, Turkey, and Greece. It's in that little corner. And they were, as I was watching this, my owner was a Thracian warrior, and he was dressed out in full gear. And when we researched it, that's what people in Thrace look like 3,700 BC. You know, and I'm like, okay, I'd never heard of this before. You know, if it had been a Greek life was the first life, you'd say, well, is it my imagination? You know, I know what Romans look like on TV. I know what Greek people look like in TV. But I didn't know what anybody from Thrace looked like on TV. Nobody I knew even knew what that was until I was looking for it and researching it. So those kind of things got us pretty interested. Then Isabella started giving us lessons. And one of the first lessons was, if it doesn't appear that the lesson is good, then you can probably judge that the lesson is false. And so she started giving us lesson after lesson on what happened in some of these past lives. In the past lives, because we know so many of them, we started to see patterns. And one interesting pattern is, it's interesting you said Viking, because we have a Viking life. We were Vikings fighting the Scottish, settling in Scotland, and we became part of a Scottish clan that accepted us. In the next life, we were English fighting the Scottish. In the next life, we were Scottish fighting the English. And then we were English fighting ourselves. And we started to realize, and Isabella said, well, of course you've lived on both sides of every issue. You've been the Viking, the Scottish, the English, the Scottish. Because if you don't live on the opposite side, you'll never learn compassion, and you'll never understand what it is to be that person. And you'll never understand that in war, there really is no winner. Because somebody always loses. So we started putting those messages down. Then we started to watch or look at some of the patterns, and we found patterns that Carla can talk about a little bit. The patterns of womanhood throughout thousands of years.
Well, I like to say we've all been saints and sinners. We have been. We've all been kings, queens, slaves, slave masters. We've been rich and poor. Again, because we learn through, adversity and experience, and the key being to learn love and compassion. I had a couple of lives, too many really, where I was, sold off at a young age, as a wife, as a slave. History has not been kind to women. History hasn't been kind to a lot of people, but women in particular. Even in the Bible, Eve seems to be the fall girl for everything. But yeah, we did see patterns over and over and over again. Some people will say that they have had lives where they have been male, female. That's not the case with us. We have been Black. I've been Black 14 times. Dave has been Black 16 times. We have been, again, Scottish, English, Egyptian, Thracian, Spanish. We've been Chinese once, back and forth, because we don't learn unless we walk in somebody else's shoes. And again, we only learn through adversity. We're slow learners, obviously. Dave has 42 lives and I have 34. He's slower than me, apparently. No, not really.
So what are you gathering data-wise about death in the afterlife? what do you think is going on there? I mean, is this forced? Are they making us come back here? That's one of my big questions. Like intergalactic convicts or prisoners shuffling us to the jail. You have to go. But I mean, what are you gathering? What kind of data are you gathering on the afterlife?
All right. So all of this becomes a very complicated setup, and so we'll talk a little bit about it. The first thing, both reincarnation and if you have had any people on that have had near-death experiences, both of them seem to support the idea that we have some sort of consciousness that exists beyond the physical body, and that those memories continue to follow us. Almost every one of the children that have spontaneous memory, and you can't coach these kids that are 3 years old, they have time between life memories. When they talk about the time between life memories, they talk about spiritual beings helping plan their next life. They talk about meeting their loved ones on the other side. They talk about not wanting to come back because it's immensely filled with love. If you talk to those people who are having near-death experiences, they frequently say they don't want to come back because love they feel like they're absorbed into love, or that they're become part of a greater whole. They feel like they've reconnected with God or spirit, Tao, source, creator, whichever term you like to use. And from our own life between lifetimes, we realize that I have memories of sitting there at what we call atonement or your past life review, and they show you the life and show you what you did wrong. And frequently, I try to say this, that it's part of the plan of divine mercy and divine justice. And yes, karma is part of that. But if you're created, you must be created for a purpose. There must be a reason. And that reason is for you to learn and grow. And it's very interesting, if you talk to people who have had a near-death experience, they almost always report things based on their perspective in this life. So atheists frequently say they didn't meet God. Catholics all say they met God or Jesus or somebody when they were up there. Well, the reality is your consciousness has had no experience when it was first created as a soul. And so you do need experience, because when you return back to your original form in between lives, or when you're finally off this cycle, we need experiences, basically pictures and experience that we can share with each other, because without experience, there is no language and there is no communication. So a spiritual being or consciousness would need experience in some sort of physical form to translate into a memory that can then be shared in the heavenly or spiritual realm, so that we can communicate in some way telepathically when we no longer have senses, so that we can show each other the pictures and think what we need to think, because without communication, you would just exist. You would have no interaction. You would be alone, except for the feeling and the sense of love.
You'll probably get something to deliver. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
So did the grumpiness go away all the way?
Actually, it did. There all sorts of interesting things happen, and again, there's many benefits to meditation. So we encourage everyone to meditate. We actually taught meditation at some local universities, but we started to meditate, which in part because of Isabella was, you have to become your best self, because anything other than being your best self is selfish, because it makes somebody else have to take care of you. And so started to try to be my best self, and I used to be significantly heavier, and the stress had got to me in the doctor's office. But the first year I started to meditate, I set a goal to lose 2 pounds, and I did exercise and eat better. But a year later, I was 104 pounds lighter. because meditation decreases cortisol, which is the stress hormone, which causes you to retain weight. It reduces your blood pressure. It reduces blood sugars. It increases serotonin and dopamine, which are those mediators in the brain that fight depression. And so I literally became happier, thinner, and healthier. The meditation does change things, and it made me much more spiritual.
I've tried to understand meditation. I think I do it on some levels, but it's like I'm always struggling with just trying to understand exactly what it is. And I mean, it seems like a lot of it's like going within and closing your eyes and focusing and breathing, right? I mean, I know there's different levels.
Correct. And shutting off your mind, yes. And the other thing people don't realize is you meditate automatically every single day. Most people get in the car and you don't concentrate on driving, you drive.
Yes.
And you turn the corner when you're supposed to turn the corner, and it becomes an automatic thing because your mind is free to respond to whatever it sees, but it's not thinking about what it sees. And so while you're meditating, you can see or hear, feel, sense what you're not necessarily experiencing or doing. So if you quit doing anything and there's no stimulus, the stimulus comes from within.
How do you shut off the mind? Sometimes it seems like my mind's shut off and I need to turn it on, that I've shut it off too much. Crystal clear.
So I think it's difficult to start with. Now I don't think it's difficult at all. For me, it's part of the connection. But people talk about the pineal gland and all, the third eye, and there may be even some science behind that, because the third eye does focus some memory, and there's some interesting things, because when you have past life regression, like we learned with Dr. Weiss, the time between wake and sleep, and when you meditate, there's actually increased alpha and theta waves in the brain, which are associated with memory, which is how we got past life memories. They're saved in our subconscious. And so just to explain how it kind of works, in this life, the first time you touch something that's hot, it burns you. The next time you touch something hot in this life, you pull back faster. The reality is we save everything as a positive or negative experience, which ties into karma. And if we save them from past lives, it's actually protective. Because if we face something that we faced before that killed us, we'll try to avoid it, even if we don't understand it. And
most trauma is what surfaces first. A lot of times in past life regression or in memories, that's what you remember, something traumatic. In our very last life, Dave and I were brother and sister in Chicago. I was 6, he was 4. Our names were Katie and Johnny. We were on our playing on our 3rd story staircase on Christmas Eve, and we fell to our deaths and broke our necks. And of course, the memories that we both have, of course, take us right there. I remember one time I was being hypnotized, and of course, a lot of times they walk you down or up a staircase. Well, that is definitely the wrong way to do it with me, because I immediately have that. I jump to that memory. So unfortunately, but fortunately, the adversity or trauma surfaces, but that's where we carry those problems to the next life. And that's what we have to undo.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because one of the things past life regression does, and actually Carla and I don't do it for a living. We've been just trying to share the message. But past life regression helps people heal some of their trauma from their past lives. And if they've carried some of that trauma forward, just addressing it, seeing it, and realizing that it can no longer hurt you by visiting it again really does help you get through that problem and let that problem be not one for this life. And it's interesting because even from the lessons, it's really from Dr. Weiss, who has been a relatively sort of, I don't know what you want to call it,
Proponent.
proponent of this is he was a psychiatrist. He was regressing people to their childhood, trying to find out what was their trauma. And some of those people went spontaneously past their birth to a past life and found the trauma in a life before. And so that became one of his theories on how to deal with it. And past life regression has been used to help people heal past life trauma. And we do it mostly with friends and family and people we know, because we don't do it for a living. I'm still working as a vice president of medical affairs at a small Midwestern hospital. So I don't need to earn money from doing past life regression. But we're still writing our books and trying to do that. And then one of the other most important lessons that we learned, and this is a lesson that everybody needs to know, which is really, there is no hell. Hell is something we create for ourselves. But there is no hell. This is a life that continues, and our consciousness continues to another life and another life and another life until we actually overcome and learn all the lessons that we need so that we can return back as the love in which we were created. And one of the very first lessons that Isabella taught us was to get off the karmic wheel. You have to follow the 5 simple rules for life.
And the 5 simple rules, Isabella said, we all know what the 10 commandments are usually. I mean, the older generation does, but she could break them down, simplify them for us. If you live a life without conceit, jealousy, selfishness, and unforgiveness, then you'll be making all your decisions out of love and compassion. And if we do that, we can get off the karmic wheel, because that's the object.
And there was a quote I saw recently from Neil Gaiman, a writer. It says, "I think hell is something you carry around with you, not somewhere you go."
Correct.
Like states of mind.
Yeah.
Well, one reason we do this show is just to give you some insight on why we do this show is when I was younger, at 17, I went through testicular cancer, and I had to go through exploratory surgery and woke up to find out I lost one in the war, and you had to go through chemo and all this crazy chemicals pumped into your body, and it was terrible. And I'm fine now, and I got healed, and it was a doctor from Atlanta and Emory and University, I believe, and that was who was doing the chemo and stuff. But a year or so later, after I was healed, my dad died, and I started to have a lot of weird experiences, from seeing beings of light with my physical eyes, one standing on a cloud top, one flying through the sky, 2 leaving my house. And I had some UFO stuff. I don't think I've been taken or anything, but I've seen weird stuff over the houses that I've lived at with multiple witnesses, and had some ghost stuff. But I kind of think the beings of light are there's different theories, and I've talked to different people about it. Like I've had a medicine man down in South America say that they gather down there and have parties and watch the shining ones in the sky. And I'm like, what, really? But it's like no big deal. But I think what I've seen on a lot of levels is human souls going to and from the earth. And it kind of like I've looked into the heavens and seen them up there in clusters standing around, kind of related to a Sims game. And it's like there's a staging area up there.
Yeah,
absolutely, Jeff.
There's something to it for sure.
There definitely is.
So, Jeff, there's been times, and I haven't had a near-death experience, but I've had the visualization, which is very interesting what you just said. Because what I saw was, every time I say it, and it's probably because I've heard some presidents say this, but looking into the sky, into the back of my mind, I see 1,000 points of light. And all points of light are connected. And as the points of light are connected, I start to see that they swirl in and among themselves. And they go in and out and in and out. And in the center portion, all of them pass each other at some time. But in the center portion, it's spinning. And as it's spinning, sooner or later, every soul reaches that center spinning point, and that soul gets placed and moved out. Carla has watched and seen things where she sees somebody who's died and suddenly she sees somebody rising. Just like what you said, Jeff. And this connection spot, whatever it is in the back of our mind, if it's the pineal gland, if it's the center of our mind, this spot that's not us, that connects with us, connects with the divine, we will say, or connects with God, your spirit guide, your angels, the beings of light. All of those experiences become something that is a non-physical experience. And people will talk about people who say they astral project. And so Carla's had an experience with that. But if you astral project, your consciousness is outside your body and no longer there. If you experience a vision that is spiritual or in heaven or in the unseen realm that's non-physical, non-material, that experience is something that's, your consciousness is somewhere else. If during reincarnation, the time between lives, your consciousness is actually within that spiritual world. If you're having an NDE, your consciousness is in some other realm. It's within that spiritual world. I believe some of the alien abductions are people who are experiencing astral projection type experience where they're outside of their physical body and they're looking at something that is non-physical, not present here, but maybe in a spiritual realm. And a lot of people will talk about crystalline structures, or they see beings of light. And when they talk about the beings of light, they see strange shaped heads and lights shining through the eyes. And some people describe those as angels, and some people describe those as demons, and some people describe them as aliens, and some people describe them as my loved one came to meet me. But whatever that experience is, it's something that's not physical, not within this universe, not within our material world. And it seems to be not tied to time or energy or structure, but something that is tied to this theory of consciousness that exists, that continues outside of our life.
Have you ever seen Ron Howard's Cocoon?
Yes.
That's it. I'm telling you.
That's your favorite. That's your favorite movie.
That's
there.
my go-to for The Secret of Life. There's something to it. I'm telling you. I think Opie took some shrooms or something, but maybe not. But he definitely tapped into something there. There's definitely something going on for sure. And of course, there's part 2, The Return. You know, those movies are really hard to find. If you go, you can only get them on eBay, and they're like real expensive because for some reason they're just not creating them anymore, like putting them out or whatever. I had to pay, like, I forget what, not too much for them at one point when I got the DVDs. But so let's see what Wham thinks here. Wham, have you been here in a past life?
Well, I don't. I interpret all this very, very differently. I first had my experience of what I guess some would define as a past life after a brain injury and a concussion. And I had a very, very intense experience. I was recovering from it, actually, and it wasn't during the injury. I was recovering from it. And I had this very intense experience of I suddenly sort of found myself as a young man in a fringed tunic. I guess it was more of a skirt. And he was, what I remember is hearing the sound of his bare feet slapping against like a stone floor. And he was running as for his life because, well, and there's a whole story there, but it turned out that he was a slave who was escaping from a Sumerian temple complex. And, there was this whole backstory behind him. What I remember about the experience was I was really struck by, he had done some stuff that slaves shouldn't do. And so he was running away to keep from getting killed. And he got away. I kind of lost track of what happened to him eventually, but, and then I had another experience some years later where I was doing types of meditation. I've done meditation now for over 30 years of various types. And but I was doing another type of meditation. I was learning a new technique, and this was my first experience of the way I look at this stuff. I connected with a group of, and I didn't know what they were at first. But with a group of Neanderthal. It was like a family group, and they were up on top of a ridge, and they were watching for migrating animals to come in. And they had built a fire, and they were all just sort of hanging out with each other and communing. And the thing that was really interesting to me about that experience was that I was not one of them. I was somehow, my consciousness was projected among them. And they were aware of me and perceived me as a kind of presence. But I was able to sort of enter into their consciousness and realized a lot of things about them, about the Neanderthal. And this is before we knew about them, really. There's a lot of new information that's come out about them, about how their brains were bigger and how they did have linguistic abilities, and they were far more sophisticated than we previously thought. And what's interesting to me is that my experience with them gave me a lot of bits of information that later has been confirmed over the past few years as people's views have changed. But I wasn't one of them. I wasn't reincarnated among them. It was like I was projected into what we call the past, and had this experience of them. And I've had my own UFO experiences and ghost experiences and experiences with past people and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've told various of those stories on here before, but the approach to all this stuff that has always made the most sense to me is the approach that I find in the Seth material, which is that there are no past lives, there are only present lives, and the past, present, future is an artifact of our focus here. And so when we're experiencing past lives, we are actually experiencing other aspects of ourselves, other things that we're connected to, people perhaps, or beings that we're connected to, that from our perspective are in the past, but in fact exist at the same time as we do, that everything is present. And when you do connect with somebody that you feel more of a kinship with, like that slave that was escaping from the illicit affair that he had with the priestess of Ishtar, which made her pregnant. That was the other part of the story. That there's a kind of an exchange between your life and their life, because they're not exactly the same as you are. I don't believe that there is like one soul that we all are. I actually have had the experience of myself as being a complex of multiple consciousnesses that reside within one body. And so I tend to not think of myself as having one soul. There is perhaps an impulse that gave rise to the being that is me here, but I'm focused here. And so what that's done for me is, I've remembered a lot of things that I guess we would call past lives, and some of them have been meaningful and some of them haven't been. Some of them have explained some of my habits. I've also had experiences of future lives, which nobody talks about, but I've had experiences of possible what would consider future existences, and other existences that are not human at all. In fact, there's a place that I go to a lot when I'm really spiritually sort of collapsed and bereft and I need to rest, there in some other universe, it's not in ours because the physics doesn't work. Okay, the physics would not work here. But in some other universe, I am a being who is among several, I'm connected to a being who among several other types of beings exists on a rogue planet that is comprised of some kind of a substance. I mean, this sounds really bizarre, but is comprised of some kind of a substance that absorbs the actual electromagnetic radiation of stars. And the reason why it does this is it provides a respite for traveling galactic beings that need to come and rest. And that's all it does. That's all it does. That is its sole purpose. But these beings are not human. They are not remotely human in any way, shape, or form. I call it the lapis sphere because whatever this stone or mineral is that this planet is made of, this rogue planet, looks like lapis to us, to me, but I don't know that that's what it is. So, I mean, what the net result of all of this has been for me has been a reconnection with, and Jeffrey knows about this, a reconnection with kind of more ancestral indigenous ways of looking at the world, which see the world, the world that we live in here as simply a place where lots of other worlds meet, as an expression of consciousness right now, and what it's led me to is this realization that, I may have all these quote unquote past lives or future lives or probable lives, probable aspects of myself that exist in other places or right next to me. But the truth is that the life that I lead right now, right here, that's the life that's important, because that's the life that I'm supposed to live.
Absolutely, Wham. That is one of the lessons that we've learned.
Yeah.
You can't really become absorbed with your past lives because those lessons have already sort of come and gone. You can't change them. You can't do anything. All you can do is change because you've learned something from those past lives. Now,
I don't know that I've learned that much from them, actually. I mean, some of the lives that I've learned, that I've experienced, wherever they are, I just think to myself, I'm so sorry that you had to experience that because I don't have to experience that. It's like I'm done with that. So
unfortunately, the Seth Speaks and the Seth stuff is not my favorite writing that's out there, but it's okay. It's a very interesting spiritual thought patterns. Some of the things you say have to be true if you've experienced them, but one of them is, we talk about aliens abducting people here, and we realize that aliens would never be anything like us. If you look at quantum physics and you look at the alpha constant that exists, aliens can't look humanoid. They can't even function this way because as you get farther away from our solar system, the alpha constant changes. So no one could be, in the next galaxy or the next set of galaxies or the next universe and have a constant that looks anything like the one does on Earth, because it changes. It gets greater as you go in one direction and smaller in the other. And so there wouldn't be any other carbon-based, oxygen-based creatures in the universe that could possibly come here and visit. So as you said, Wham, if you existed somewhere else, you would have to exist as a goo or a something else, because the experience would not be like this. And one of the reasons I really don't fall into some of the UFO things is we would be so different, they would have no reason to come here and they would have no reason to need us, because what we have on this planet would be of no use to them.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I've done a lot of work on UFO materials. I mean, I wrote my PhD on UFO abduction narratives in the United States. So, I would consider myself to be a pretty good expert on those narratives. And my experience with the narratives, not the experiences necessarily, because those are often quite different than the narratives that people create about their experiences. But I've always thought that the narratives about aliens and abduction are more about us than they are about anybody coming here. I mean, who knows? I mean, I think that lots of different things are possible, but it's just not. To me, what's more interesting about those stories is what those stories do reveal about us and sort of our hidden fears and our obsessions and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you about the Seth material because I've read all of it and I've studied it for over 45 years. So I have found that it is a very useful tool when used consistently, and not just when people stick to just like maybe two of the books, the most popular books, because those are the most popular books, but that's actually not where the meat and potatoes of the metaphysical system is. I do agree that what's important about these materials is that they reveal that our lives are based in a kind of, and even physical reality itself is based in consciousness, and that the material world is an expression of consciousness, and as a result of that, of course, we're going to be connected to stuff. Of course, we're going to be connected to each other and to the world and to other beings. Whether or not they're human or not, it doesn't make any difference in the world. I mean, I'm connected to all these beings around me that I see every day, and most of them aren't human. In fact, I generally prefer non-human beings because humans are a pain in the butt. So, but I'll agree with you about that. It's, I guess I tend not to privilege the materiality of the world that much, except that, I understand that this is my experience here and that's an important aspect of my experience, but it isn't more important than anything else. It's one of many kinds of important experiences. So, but, Jeffrey asked me for my take, and that's my take.
I got it.
That's my take.
Yes.
So,
go ahead.
We'll give you. We'll change it just a little because we probably disagree on a couple things there. But the other thing that we did in some of our books is our second book was Hell No Reincarnation, and in our third book we'd love your insight on, Wham. But the second book was Hell No Reincarnation. We actually looked at the research that's out there. We looked at religion in general. And how it relates to certainly Judaism has a significant reincarnation basis. We looked at Hindu, which has a significant reincarnation basis. We did the research on actually hell. And it's really interesting if you look at the history of hell, because one of the things that Isabella told us early on was there really is no hell. And we looked at the history and we realized that if you go biblically, you start seeing the Jews talked about Sheol, and some of the other writing was done in Greek, which they talk about Hades, and literally Sheol and Hades are both just the place dead people go. Sheol is the land of atonement. And then you realize in the Bible they start writing about the Valley of Gehenna, and they use the Valley of Gehenna to mean a horrible place. But the Valley of Gehenna is an actual physical place outside of Jerusalem. It's a ditch. It's a ditch that the sewage system in Jerusalem drains into, and it's the same ditch that the Nero burned Christians in. It's the same ditch that the judges of Judaism killed their illegitimate children in. It's the place of fire and death, but it's an actual physical place in the story. And it wasn't until the King James Bible in the 1600s, long after Dante wrote a fantasy story about levels of hell, that the name hell became a place that you went to get punished and die. It became a Christian thought in the early part of the church, but hell literally was a place that he replaced the name Sheol, the Valley of Gehenna, and Hades with in the King James Bible. And why did he use hell? Because his wife was of Germanic descent, and Helia was the goddess, pagan goddess of the underworld. So he named it Hell.
Yeah, well, and Helia was, if you go back to those original sources, she was the goddess of the underworld, but she also resided over a particular portion of the soul. In early Germanic thought, you actually had 9 different components to the soul, and various of them would go to various locations, kind of like the Egyptians did. And hell was the place where the part or the aspect that eventually became you, here as a personality, that was one of the places where the ancestral souls hung out, and so from the German perspective, she was a goddess of the dead, but that was not necessarily a bad thing. That was just simply sort of where some people, that was part of your soul went. But when that all got translated by Christian stuff, especially monks and stuff, they made her into this really kind of fearsome person. She was a goddess and she lived in her own realm. And it was sort of a way of disempowering her and making her kind of bad,
Right.
Speaking of what Carla was saying about how crappy women have been treated, over the years,
Yep. So that's in our second book. And then our third book is called The Manual. And it is directly related to how God interacts with planning, and our spirit guides react with planning our next lives. It talks all about the time in between lives, it's atonement, and it talks about how our astrological signs are related to our past life karma. And so that part of it is very interesting, and a lot of people enjoy that because we start to talk how God has really got a kind thought for us, and God creates us with a zodiac sign in our next life that will help us with the karma we're bringing from our last life. And that's all in our third book, The Manual. So I don't know if, Wham, you were talking about zodiac stuff. You have some interest in that area.
Well, I've studied it. I was an astrologer at one point. I mean, so I sort of use it kind of, as a kind of a psychological tool. But the truth is, that's what part of me does with it, and because it's a language I've learned. But another part of me doesn't care, because it's sort of like, I've got to be who I am here, and if I worry too much about all that stuff, then I'm not paying attention to what is in front of me and taking care of that as it is. I can tell you what my chart is. I'm a Leo. I have a Capricorn rising. I have a Taurus moon. I have Saturn in Capricorn in my first house. I have a lot of Scorpio and Virgo stuff. So I'm picky, crabby, persistent, and loud, and so maybe that all explains that, But on the other hand, so what? I have to live the life that I live. I can't judge people or myself too harshly based on that. So,
I'm a Capricorn. I just want to say I'm a Capricorn. It's a goat man. It's very awkward.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Jeffrey's a good goat man, though. He's one of the best goat men.
So I'm going to tell you another story because, of course, we've been attached to the spiritual things, and I actually had the opportunity to watch my own father's time between lives, and I think it illustrates a lot of interesting topics. So my father in a past life was a slave trader. And he stole people from Africa and he tied them chained them in the base of his boat. He split families apart. In his last life atonement, when he was watching his past life review, they went through his life as a slave trader. Then they went through his life the last life before this one, where his daughter was abducted and his wife died in childbirth. And in this life, he was really a wonderful man. He had his specialist degree, which is like a little bit above in education, master's degree. He was a principal. He did a lot of good things for his community. What happened was, the last 20 years of his life, he was chained to a wheelchair because of Parkinson's. Again, all of that is to learn compassion. So he had to go through some of what he put through people through in the past to learn compassion.
I'm hearing some background. I don't know. Is that from?
It's from me. There's
Okay.
a conversation going on back here.
Making sure it's not a.
I can't always be muted.
It's
so.
okay. I'm just making sure it was another StreamYard leading into us, like Skype does sometimes.
Whoever it is in the background loves you, because I've heard that.
We love you too. All right, but so what is your astrological sign?
I'm a Pisces, and interestingly, that means that I have an angel in this life that helps me avoid selfishness. Now, when I first learned that Pisces was a selfish astrological sign, I thought, well, gee, I don't think I'm selfish, But we did learn, and we wrote in our books what selfish really means. Selfish can mean, because I was selfish for a long time. If I considered that I ate too much, drank too much, was a little, self-absorbed or whatever, that made me become addictive behavior. Yes, self-destructive. All of those things are selfish. Well, I didn't realize I was being selfish, but if you don't take care of yourself, you realize that sooner or later somebody will. If you gain too much weight, you're going to become diabetic. If you don't exercise, you may have heart disease. If you don't, if you eat poorly or you drink too much, you'll get liver cirrhosis, and somebody's going to take care of you. Well, that means you're using up somebody else's valuable resource to take care of you, so you're selfish. So I realized that, yes, I had some sort of selfish tendency that I needed to take care of.
Here.
And as I took care of it,
up too. There.
if I took care of the selfish tendencies, meaning that God would give me a special angel to help me, I would overcome. And of course, yes, I've lost some weight. I think I'm a better person. I'm trying to share the love and serve the message. So, is Capricorn selfish? Yeah, and yeah. So Jeff, you said you're a Capricorn.
Yes. Well, according to most things I see about us, we're like these stockbrokers or something, which is like that's not what I am at all.
The stockbrokers are bohemians.
Yeah, rich stockbrokers, which is neither.
They are. They do tend to be people who want to use other people's money and take money and save money. So I suppose that falls in that stockbroker category. But
he's talking about his ex-wife.
Yeah, I'm talking about an ex-wife. Sorry.
Oh man.
But so still, unforgiveness means that it may be hard for you to forgive others or yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you see any of that in your own life. Do you blame yourself for problems? Do you not let it go? Those kind of problems. The other thing that's in the book, the manual, is that not only do we include astrological signs and how that is related to your past lives and your next life, we also include archetypes that are not exactly like Jung, but they're close. They're a set of 12 archetypes. And we also include 12 traits that follow you from life to life as you change and grow. And again, you don't have to know whether you're a squirrel in this life. If you start to evaluate and read what a squirrel becomes in this life, somebody who never settles down, keeps running, always trying to be busy, it doesn't matter if you're an archetype of hero or an archetype of explorer. If you read what an explorer is, and how an explorer is sometimes wants to go and explore and be out there in the world. But in a past life, you may not have taken care of your kids. And so in this life, you don't want to be an explorer. You want to be a caregiver. You want to stay home. You want to make sure you take care of the kids. Or if you see the ability to want to run and search and look and explore, then you should look for that person that you want to marry. There's someone who wants to run, look, and explore. Because if that person is a caregiver and wants to stay at home, and you want to run and go, then the two won't work as well together. And so if you start to picture how your zodiac signs draw you together in the next life, how your traits may draw you together, you can start to develop a picture of what you need to work on in this life, which is somewhat what Wham is talking about. It's really this life that we have to all deal with, focus on. But if you have something that can teach you what to focus on, it can help you get through this life better. And again, the easiest thing is to make every choice and decision out of love, which is part of those 5 simple rules.
I've had a weird experience where I had a dream, or I don't know if it was a dream or like a vision. I think it was a dream. It was a long time ago, but there was a preacher hanging a Native American, and he was reading the Bible, and then he hung with a noose. And I have had weird neck injuries, like from, my neck would go out and weird stuff after that. And I've always said I'd rather be the native, I guess, in that situation than the kind of the hypocrisy of the preacher hanging some dude while he reads the Bible to him.
Yeah.
But
Jeff,
I
think in your next life, if you were the preacher, you would expect that there would be certainly adversity and some sort of test to make you understand what you put the Indian through.
Yes. Or I could have been the native, because I've had some native ghost kind of stuff happen before where I've seen them in full attire, stuff like that. And I have a big interest in that. So, it could be either way. I don't know. But, I think that could be a past life. Do I know 110%? No, but there seems like there's something weird to it for sure.
Well, there's 2 lessons in there, Jeff. The first lesson is it's always wrong to shorten someone's life, because this life has value and there are lessons you're meant to learn and things you're meant to experience. And so if you cut someone else's life short, you're certainly going to carry karma with you in the next life.
Yes.
The other thing that's a lesson in that is suicide is always wrong. Because if you take your own life, you're going to cut the lessons you were supposed to learn in this life short. And if you didn't learn them, you're probably coming back in a situation that is the same or worse. So you won't escape anything through suicide. You'll still have those same lessons to live through and the same adversity to go through. So those are some of the lessons that you can learn when you start looking at past lives.
Yeah,
those
when it comes
to exist.
When it comes to hell and the belief in that and stuff, I know Neil Donald Walsh says some stuff similar, like he doesn't think there's a hell and things like that. I guess, part of me have seeing those beings of light in the heavens. Sometimes I wonder if that's like it, that you basically just go to that stationary and these beings of light and you evolve and get shuffled back and forth. But I would like to, maybe hell is states of mind. Maybe you can get caught in your own suffering and things like that. It's a hard thing to grasp, I guess, when you look at the earth and some of the crazy crimes and stuff and murders that go on, and you get kind of caught up in the philosophy part of it. How does this stuff happen? Why does it happen? So it's kind of like there's also stuff there that makes you think there is a hell or a devil, because just some of the, I don't want to get into some of the awful things, but some of the stuff in the headlines we see that are just sick with kids and crazy stuff like that. So is that just the error of man's thinking? If there's no hell, or I know there's so many theories about it, but there's a lot of struggle with just trying to be open to that fact that maybe there isn't.
Part of it, Jeff, is, and this is always hard to tell people because everybody focuses on the most horrific things that occur, and we now have the internet, and it exposes all of it to all of it all the time. So it's, I don't want to watch the news. I hardly want to look at Facebook. Now I do, because we connect with a lot of people that way. But the reality is it's filled with disaster. and the worst parts of humanity keep exposing themselves. But if we look at real history, and this is hard for people to understand, we are actually in the least violent, the least war-prone, the most productive, the most successful, the least hungry world that it has ever been. There is less violence, less war, less people go to bed hungry. We're in the best situation we ever had. And so I'd like to believe that over the last thousands and thousands of years, mankind is actually improving. Because 6,000 years ago, man didn't do anything but get up in the morning and spend all day looking for the next meal and fighting the next tribe off so that he could get the next meal. And people died in their 20s and 30s and 40s of starvation and disease and disaster. Now we live 80 some years. Infant mortality is low. Cooperation that we've learned for 6,000 years has made us better. We live in a country that is, if you listen, still however, this country is based on trying to remove racism. We are not at war with anybody. Now, we're getting ready to maybe go to the Ukraine, but we're really not. There's no one dying by the thousands and the thousands and the hundreds of thousands like we have in wars before. And there's certainly not 6 million Jews going to die this year. Those are history lessons that we've overcome that has improved. So the world is actually improving, and it's improving very rapidly. And so I'd like to believe that as a society, as a group, as a soul family that keeps returning to the same thing, because that's one of the things we've learned. We keep returning with some of the same people over and over again to either help them or test them. As a soul family, this human race is actually learning and growing, is raising their vibration, as some will say. It's improving its outcome and its output. And the society is better than it ever has. And we do have to do something, because if we keep polluting, destroying the earth, and etc., there'll be no place left to reincarnate when we want to anyway, because the earth will be gone.
Yeah, the Ukraine thing's definitely been a lot of fear stuff, and a lot of people think Russia's doing it just for political situations, and they know how to sow fear and everything. Is what they do. But I mean, let's face it, if that happened, that would probably trigger a nuclear holocaust, I would think. So hopefully that's not going to happen, but it's definitely been crazy in the news, that's for sure, lately, about all that. Definitely terrifying. So hopefully not. But it just seems like China and them are trying to, start something. And it just seems like if something like that starts, I don't see a positive point to it. Like, it would be really bad, nuclear cloud-wise.
Right. Sure. So, Jeff, here's one other topic that we didn't really discuss.
Okay.
Because every one of those concerns with the great Holocaust, the great disaster, the next great war, we're all eternal beings. There is no death. There is no end. Your consciousness will continue. Mm-hmm. If there's going to be a great disaster, God already knows that it's going to happen. And there's a plan for that. And so your Jeff Pritchard is not going to disappear. Your Jeff or your Bill or Tim or your Mohican name when you were an Indian, it's all going to still be you, and it's going to continue.
Yes.
So there is no death, and nobody is gone forever. It's never a final. You're an eternal being, and so there really is no reason to fear.
The fact that this is,
the end doesn't matter.
The fact that this is infinite is kind of scary too, though, isn't it? A little immortal forever. I mean, I'm sure it's more perkier from a different vantage point than Earth, for sure.
Think of it this way, Jeff. We were placed here for these experiences and these lessons. And so here, every one of us feels like we're misplaced. Because this is not our original home. Our original home is God, heaven, that spiritual realm. And in that realm, you're completely bathed and filled with love. And like most of the people who have NDEs or people who have had intermission memories of the time between lives, they don't want to return because being pulled away from that love is uncomfortable and it feels abnormal.
Yes.
And so we're all pulled away from the love that we should be surrounding. And when this is finally over and you've gotten off the cycle of reincarnation and you've learned all the lessons and you start to make those choices of love and compassion, you return to a point where you have no wants, no needs, and completely engulfed in love, and you can actually appreciate it because you know what it's like to be without. And that's sort of the mission we're here for.
Here's an interesting book I came across that you guys might want to check out. It's interesting. I could only find it on audiobook, but it's A History of Ghosts by Peter Aykroyd. That's Dan Aykroyd's father. And somehow I came across it, and I couldn't find the book to buy because it's, well, you could if you got $200. Let's put it that way. It's one of those books where you got to pay a lot. But I found one audiobook on eBay of it. I'm sure there's other ones out there, but I think it's on Audible too. Yeah, it's from Audible. But basically, it's Dan Aykroyd's dad and the history of ghosts. Somehow it helped with Ghostbusters. So I haven't listened to it yet, but I figured maybe Peter Aykroyd, if y'all want to look it up. It sounds pretty interesting. But where's the best place to get your guys' books at? And if you won't, give us some links.
All right. So the best place to find all the links is thegiftofpastlives.com. That's our website. All of our books are on the website. So they can click Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or if you're in the UK, there's UK links. Japan, China, India, for Amazon, all of them, and many of the other smaller bookstores. You can order them, of course, because everybody's been through COVID. You know, we have a lot of small businesses that are struggling. You can go to your local small business and order it there. It's certainly available as an ebook, which is cheaper. Our three
For some reason your volume got lower. I don't know.
So I'll try again. It's thegiftofpastlives.com.
Okay.
And there's links to all of our books on Amazon and other distributors. But I also recommend you go to your local bookstore and order it, because they can order it as well. And support some of your local bookstores because they're not doing as well because people just haven't been out shopping.
Your volume was fine. Somehow I made my volume lower, and I'm still not sure how I did that. God knows. But we appreciate it so much. It's been a great show, and thank you so much for coming on, and keep me in the loop in the future on any future endeavors. I've really enjoyed it, and you guys really seem, modest and down to earth, and the past life subject's definitely interesting me. It's good to learn more about it. Thank you.
Thank you much, Jeff. Thank you, Em.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, and we'll catch you later, and I'll send you the archives. I'll send y'all guys the archive when it's done. Take care, Dave and Carla. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
Good night.
Good night. All right, let's see. Still got about 15 minutes or so, or 20 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing in Albany? What's going on?
Well, I will tell you privately what I'm doing.
Okay. Uh-oh.
No, I'm not doing anything that I'm not doing anything that nobody important doesn't know about. I'm not.
Okay.
But I'm having a good time. I'll tell you that.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, it's 20s here in Florida tonight, I think. So that's definitely.
That's cold. Wow. That's cold for Florida.
And the room we're in sucks, so you freeze. So it's like there's a heater. It's like, is the heater on in here?
Well, I haven't talked to you since you had to make that move. So how are you guys doing?
We're doing okay. It's just been, this house is little. My mom's here, my brother and his son, and there's too many dogs, like way too many. A lot of them are old and have to be taken care of in special ways, and seem like they could transition in the next few years or sooner. So, blind and things like that. So it's hard, but it's not. we're okay. We're doing okay. Just adjusting for sure.
Well, when you had to put a bunch of your stuff into storage, right?
Yes, and that's the hard part, especially when you go somewhere and there's no room to put anything hardly, and you're trying
Right, exactly.
all this craziness and things like that. And basically, my room is a porch that got closed in by my brother in a kind of redneckish kind of way. It's not that bad, but it could be a little better.
What I remember is that when you and Christina first got together, you were still living at your mom's, and so it was like kind of a nice thing, even though you had to take care of Christina's grandmother. It was kind of a nice thing to actually live in a house where there was some room.
Yeah, it was. And then things got weird with her mom and stuff, and all that stuff happened. But yeah, it's a change. We're adjusting and trying to make it better. So tomorrow I see my daughter. I didn't get to see her last month because I was so busy and everything. So I have to give her gifts and stuff tomorrow. Like, it was just crazy last month. We're still like regenerating from all that. The furniture stuff lifting and out killed us. Like, it was just a lot.
Oh yeah, moving is a pain. And I know you have lots of stuff, and I have so many books that it's kind of like, I think that if I ever have to move, I'm just going to like open the windows and start chucking them out, just start flinging them out of the windows, and I'll keep the ones that survive the plunge.
One thing that's real bad here that I've had to deal with and has been kind of disheartening is there's a bad field mice problem. And they got some of the books.
Oh no.
And some of them were some UFO stuff from Andy. And,
oh jeez.
They are just like little monsters. And I mean, they seem to be gone now, but I'm going to go. I mean, I've cleaned it all up, but there's like this stack of books that they got a hold of, and I want to impale every one of them. And I don't like to kill things, but that's just too much. You've crossed the line.
You killed my UFO books.
Yeah, that is bad. Like, and I don't know what you can do for them. I've read different things. There's really not anything you can do. You can wipe them off or whatever. It's still going to see, mouse pee on them.
Yeah, the only thing I know of that will get rid of mice like that is that I've heard of, and I had to actually use this for my car, because in the past 2 years twice I've had the experience where mice or other rodents have gotten into my car and have chewed wiring in the car. And forced me to have to take it to like the dealership, and they've had to redo the wiring on it, which is crazy. And what they recommended, because this is what they were told, is when you're storing stuff, it stinks horribly, but store everything with mothballs, because they apparently hate mothballs.
Okay.
And so what I have to do is, where I park my car, I have to like have this tray that I shove under there every night that has like mothballs in it to keep them from crawling up into my car.
I got some crazy brick stuff you put out and they eat, and I know it wiped them out, but you feel bad about it. But that's it. You don't touch.
Well, this doesn't kill them; it just makes them go away. It doesn't kill them.
This was bad, and the worst thing is they eat it and then they poop all over it. It's like, was that normal? Like, you poop all over
well, no, of course they poop and pee on everything.
This is crazy.
Yeah, and their poop and their pee is actually full of toxins and pathogens that can give you diseases. You get hantavirus from their urine. I mean, it's disgusting.
Oh my God! I'm pretty sure I've taken out a civilization of them. I'm on a hit list now from what I've done. They're not here anymore, but they definitely ate that stuff. So. It's just bad, but I'm just going to go through and stack those and write them down. And if I can find them cheap one day, just get one at a time once in a while to replace them or something. I'm not going to go crazy or worry about it, but it definitely sucks when you pick up a John Keel book. I think it was that Perceptions or whatever.
I know. I got chewed on.
That was just,
no.
They didn't chew it. They just pooped and peed.
Oh, jeez.
That's rough. I mean, that's just, just try not to think about it. It'll make you go crazy. But it was strange. It was interesting. This Andrew Aloha came in and was talking about Mercury retrograde and stuff. And then out of nowhere, he said, which means Capricorn influence should be doing better with relationships again beginning tomorrow. and maybe he heard me say something about Capricorn. I don't remember, but I added him to maybe get him on the show. And earlier today, Dale and Laura Lee helped with the show to get it ready because I used a C cleaner and it wiped out the StreamYard password crap.
Oh, no.
Joe had to give me the password. So Dale's having me come on his show Thursday for an hour, which I haven't done a guest appearance in a million years. So an hour is not too bad. So I'm sure I can swing it in exchange for their help. So that's what I'm doing. An hour goes by fast. So
yeah, hours no biggie.
Really quick. But his show, I think, is The Delicious Recipe. We're going to be talking about cooking. No, I don't think it's about cooking. Or maybe it's about all kinds of different stuff. I know for sure.
Cooking and the paranormal.
Yes. Cooking and the paranormal. Had Carter Bouchard on again. I don't know if you ever sit in with him, the guy from BFRO. Have you ever sat in the show?
No, I never have.
He's in BFRO, but a lot of times he's like, well, they don't even look at paranormal stuff. I do, and kind of doesn't bad talk them, but just says they're kind of closed about that. But he's not. So he gets into all the UFO Bigfoot stuff and all these different stories, and he's had stuff follow him back from his house with his wife, and had him on recently. That was a good show. That's his third time being on. And I'm trying to see who's next week's guest is. Let's see. I just sent you Robert Bosnak, Zurich-trained Jungian psychoanalyst.
It's Jungian. Jungian, not Jungian. Don't say Jungian.
As soon as I said it, I knew it was probably not.
It's German, so it's Jungian.
And I figured I was screwing it up. Facing Apocalypse is about apocalyptic nuclear threats, ecological issues. Something about alchemy, red sulfur alchemy. I don't know what that is, but here we go, Royal Shakespeare Company. So we maybe get them to do some Shakespeare for us or something. But then who's next? There's Dr. Scott Taylor. Let me look up that person. Like for some reason I haven't made their page yet, but I know I have their info. Did you ever get Evelyn's book? If you ever want to sit on that show, let me know.
I have not gotten the book yet.
They should be sending it to you. But I got Jay down for that one because that's just how it fell. But for some reason you want to sit in, just let me know.
Okay.
Let me look up her book, Shamanic Creativity.
Yeah, I have not gotten it.
Hopefully you'll get it at some point because I know I asked for it.
By the way, do you remember Mr. Don Webb?
Yes, I do.
I have been reading his book, Energy Magic of the Vampire.
Nice.
We interviewed. It's great. It's a great book. It's actually really good.
That was a good interview. That's a good book. For
He's
sure.
He's always a good interview. He's just hilarious. Except that he uses the F-bomb. Then we have to watch it.
Did. I think he did good last time and didn't do it. Scott Taylor is NDE, so we got some more near-death experiences. And then the analyst dude, the psychoanalyst, is next week. Let me see. Into the Light, near-death. A lot of near-death. Multidimensional. What happens when we die. Things like that. I just had I got Evelyn on the 18th, Patrick O'Leary, Joe R. Lansdale, and then Jim in March with you, Jim Hunt and Micah Dank. Let me see who Jim Hunt is. I know Micah Dank, I asked for him specifically. He gets into weird Bible stuff. Like, it's not what you would think. It's really weird, like just weird.
Oh, that's fine. I'm always up for weird Bible stuff.
Like weird Bible stuff, like really weird, strange stuff. Let me see, Jim Hunt. Let me see, where's this Jim Hunt dude? Prep for Jim Hunt. Here he is. Oh, this is the guy from the TV show Knock Knock Ghost. That's available on Amazon Prime. So Grace, Bigfoot, Elemental, Shapeshifter, stuff like that. Let's see if I can find Micah.
Oh, and I meant to tell you. Do you remember we interviewed Mike Hacker, the guy who does the Audible recordings of whatever?
Sure did.
Well, 2 weeks ago, I contracted with him, and he's going to do my Mysterious Beauty book.
Really cool.
Yeah, I just sent him some sound recordings of all the indigenous names and weird names, for pronunciation. And we're going to try. He's going to try to have it done by late April, early May. So
cool. That's cool.
yeah.
And Micah Dank is here's some questions about DMT and encodes and crystal technology, CIA, mind control. I know he gets into weird Bible stuff too. I'll have to look that up. But she just gave me some little sheet with some stuff about him. Let's see. Oceanside, New York, radio news editor at CBS. Father was a producer, CBS News. I'll have to look up some of the weird Bible stuff. She don't really mention it in this, but I'm sure I can find it somewhere else. Something about acoustic levitation. I don't know what the hell that is, but things have been, I don't know if I've brought this up, but where I work before it's news, which is a little right-wing leaning, which is kind of maddening, some of the news there that I have to look at. But it's a case study of learning about how crazy politics is on both sides. But I've noticed a lot of people who've talked smack about COVID or the vaccine that I used to post from their videos, they're dead.
Isn't that weird?
That Kirsten W. Have you ever heard of her? Kirsten
Yeah.
She's friends with Roseanne.
Yeah, she died.
I would post her videos, and I never really watched them. I don't really watch any of that stuff. I just post it up for people. Some of the paranormal stuff, maybe, but the political stuff, I don't. But anyway, she would actually come to Before It's News and thank me for doing it. And not many people ever did that. Mostly, a lot of them would complain about it, which is stupid because you have an embed code on YouTube, so it doesn't make any sense. But she would talk smack about all that stuff, and she passed away. Mm-hmm. And you can look up stuff about her and Roseanne and all this stuff. She was also in that Doors movie with Oliver Stone, which I don't.
Oh yeah, that I did not remember.
I don't remember. I know she's in it, but I have no idea who she was, or I don't remember any of it. But I looked it up. She was in it, and well, some other people that have been on. She'd never been on the show, but Robert David Steele. He's a former CIA that was on the show, and it wasn't anything to do with Trump at the time. It was way before that. It was an open source manifesto. He got Trump goofy during all the Trump stuff. He's dead now, and he would go around talking smack at rallies and stuff about COVID, and was saying it's a hoax and all this stuff. He's dead. Another interesting one, Russ Dizdar, Dizdar. Has a book called The Black Awakening that's about these weird, it's a true, it's not fiction. It's about serial killer cells awakening, like shooters and real Christian, weird, super satanic, super soldier kind of stuff. He's dead. He sent me a book once. He never came on the show. And there's pictures of him hanging out with Alice Cooper and stuff, but he definitely had a little goofy right-wing kind of thing going with the Trumpagooch stuff. And then, God, there's others. I just can't even keep up with it. There's some Rob Skiba or something that was some flat earth weirdo that died. But I've just seen so many people croaking, and a lot of them are these right wing channels. They're dead. I was sharing their content to right wing political freakos there because that's what they like, and I'm having trouble finding stuff to put up. So many are dead. They're just being wiped out. It's crazy. But, I mean, it's just weird mostly how most of them talk smack about it. And then they get whacked out, They get wiped off the map from it. And there's pictures of them and stuff with their little ventilators on and stuff that are creepy.
Their little ventilators.
Look at Jay McNicholas in there. What are you doing, Jay? You must be really bored at home.
Yeah, really, if you're hanging out with us. You're hanging out with us. Oh, my God.
You thought he was on tonight. He missed it so much he came to the chat. Feel the Mabus. Feel the Mabus, the Mabus. I've seen acoustic levitation demonstrated. If my dad were alive, he could explain it to us. I don't know what that is, but I guess sound levitation. I don't know what it is.
I have no idea.
But that Kirsten W. stuff, it got really weird with the conspiracy people. They spend all this stuff. She was an agent. She took someone's money named Phil McConnell and left to another island or whatever. There's all this crazy, they go crazy. Seems like everyone that dies there becomes a pedo, and they have no evidence whatsoever. Bob Saget or whoever was a pedo. Maybe he was, but I don't see any evidence. Yeah. Right up there, Tom Hanks is one. I don't believe that. They go crazy and harass Tom Hanks on his Twitter. that he's a pedo and Pizzagate and all this crazy stuff. I mean, it'd be one thing if you had evidence.
Yeah.
There's none. They just like make up stuff for stories. I don't even post that crap.
They do.
But there's a lot of crap for sure. Non-stop crapage. And so Mercury retrograde on February 3rd's ending.
Yep.
And then tomorrow, Venus is ending her reign of terror.
Oh, actually, Venus in retrograde was fine for me. It actually it solved some issues. So it was actually really good for me.
Well, that's good. And let me see who else. Joe R. Lansdale. That's a New York Times best-selling Joe R. Lansdale. He's written a lot of good fiction stuff. He has some really good books, like just the way his style and everything. He did that Hap and Leonard series on Sundance, and that Michael K. Williams was in that as a gay black dude named, I don't know if he was Leonard. He was Hap, I think. I don't remember. I forget which one he was, but he was in that show. And it was on Sundance, but they canceled it like jerk-offs. But Joe R. Lansdale, one cool thing that he does, there's some really weird West stuff that he's wrote. And he actually rewrote the comic for Jonah Hex.
Oh, yeah?
Two Gun Mojo, and the artist is really good. It's just some really bizarre, like Wild West, throw in zombies and craziness. That's really nuts. But I love talking about the Weird West. He's also friends with Bill Paxton, that actor guy.
Yeah.
That sucked. I reread about that recently. He had a surgery and they messed it up and killed him.
Oh, jeez.
And that Bill Paxton, Express Elevator to Hell from Aliens and stuff. That was that guy. He's also Chet in Weird Science. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember the Blob, the Job of Blob?
Yeah.
Chet.
Yeah.
The Louis Anderson thing sucked. Meatloaf, that sucks, but I wasn't like a big Meatloaf or anything. But Louis Anderson, that was really crappy. I didn't know he's going through cancer and everything. The worst part is his Baskets. He's in that show as the mom.
Oh.
So they're gonna have to kill the mom now in Baskets. That's got Zach Galifianakis in it on FX, and Louis Anderson's the mother. Really funny. It's like little 30-minute episodes, but Louis Anderson was the mom. And he was always like, we got to go to Costco and get some flavored water. Costco and get some flavored water. But, and wear our moo-moos. It's pretty funny. And Zach Galifianakis was a clown. And, at the rodeo and everything. It's a good show. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm sure they'll figure out something if they're going to continue. I think it does pretty good, so they have to whack the mom, I guess.
Yeah.
But a lot of deaths, just can't even keep up with it anymore.
It's true. There are a lot of deaths.
A lot of weird suicides. I mean, I don't know if they're weird per se, but that Regina King, that's a black actress that was in Watchmen, the HBO series. And
Right, exactly.
Her son just died. He was 26. And I think it was suicide. Michael Madsen, that actor that's in all this, his son, suicide. Just a lot of crap. I need to quit looking at that front page of Bing or whatever when it turns on my search engine. It's like keeps popping up with all these deaths every day. I need a new homepage for sure. But let's see here. We got about 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. Anything else going on? Have you been doing any more radio appearances or anything?
I haven't. I've pretty much been. I've just been working on some personal stuff pretty intensely. Some stuff that came up in the spring, and that's mainly what I've been concentrating on. I signed the deal with Mike to do my Audible book. My job has been taking a lot of time and energy, but I mostly have been really sort of concentrating on my personal life and spiritual practice because, the truth is that what the pandemic showed me was, it really brought home to me death in a really big way. because I've known a lot of people who've died who've been really, really ill. Some people who've died not of COVID, but just because maybe they couldn't get health care because of COVID, stuff like that. And so for me, I just realized I needed to work on some stuff. So that's what I've been doing. So I haven't been doing it very much professionally. I haven't even been online very much. If you've noticed, I haven't been on Facebook very much. I haven't been doing that kind of stuff very much. And I'm sure I'll probably return to it at some point, but
Facebook is just so annoying. I go on there.
It's horrible.
But
it's terrible.
The worst thing is, like, I'm being punished on Facebook right now, and I don't even know why. For 90 days, I'm on the lesser news feed for sharing misinformation. But when you click to see what it is you shared, it won't show it to you. And I'm not someone that gets on there and shares misinformation that I know. I don't really share any of that COVID stuff at all on there ever. So it's just confusing. Like I did maybe a long time ago, but I don't think it was misinformation. I mostly just show funny memes or weird stuff or horror stuff. So I don't even understand. Like, it's just weird. Like, I just got 90 days punished. I don't even know what I did. And when you click on the article, you can't even see the title or anything. It's just bizarre. They're just jerk-offs. They're just arses. It's like, at least show me what I shared, because I'd be surprised what it was, because I don't really remember sharing anything too crazy on there, but stuff about horror movies or UFOs or something. So they're just idiots.
Yeah.
And, I do have the Oculus thing. I like that a lot, but they were starting to make that so you don't have to use Facebook with it, which is good, because if you lose your account or something, you lose that, which sucks. Of course, now he's trying to turn that into Meta or some creepy stuff. I don't even know what the hell that is. Are they going to change Facebook's name to Meta? The metaverse or whatever this weird new term is that it's probably been around for a while, but now they're hyping it up and saying they're going to change their name to Meta, META, and all this weird stuff. But it's definitely weird. But Facebook is a pain in the butt. They definitely seem like, I've always been on their hit list for some reason. People I know could share stuff with boobies on it, like artwork, and not a thing will happen to them. I could share a painting of Frankenstein carrying a lady with boobies, and I'll get 30 days in like a day.
Right.
Anything like that. But everyone else gets to do it for some reason, I'm booby oppressed on there. Something's going on for sure. But I share anything like that. There was one thing I did. I forget. It was to Christina, and it was just a funny GIF, and it was in their collection of GIFs, but it was kind of a little perverted. It was a black dude with a remote under the covers, and it looked like a boner, but it wasn't a boner. It was just a black guy with a remote. I swear in 10 seconds, I was punished for doing the GIF, and it came from their GIFs.
I know.
It's like, what the hell? So it's like, I just find myself not doing anything like that on there, because it's just weird.
Yeah, I know. I know a lot of people who've gotten, they've gotten sent to jail, and they don't know why. They're not even told.
Yeah.
Why they go to jail.
With them, really, it's hard to talk to them. It's just crazy. It's like a prison, like a digital prison.
Well, it's all run by algorithms, so it's like if you trip one, then it'll just sort of do it. What it reminds me of is when I worked at the Navy, and they were first doing, and this was back in like 2005, 2006, when they were still figuring out, sort of their filters for what they would permit from people being online or not. They wanted to prevent certain types of materials from getting on the server, for students and stuff. And, but what they would do is, I don't know who actually ran things for them, but what they would do is if if something that you tried to upload or just a site that you went to tripped their stuff, they would actually tell you why it tripped it, right? And all kinds of weird stuff tripped it. Like, for example, you couldn't search the word aphrodisiac, you know. But the funniest thing was that as a result of, you know, whatever kinds of, you know, trigger happy keywords they put in, you know, for their filtering system, it turned out that it caused our network, and this is at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, it caused our network to not be able to access any other military installation, because any other military installation would be filtered as having violent and pernicious content. So it was like we couldn't like get on the internet and contact or look at the web page for, you know, the Marine Training Center in Quantico. because the Marine Training Center came up as being a violent place. And yet we were the Naval Academy. It was hilarious. It was just bizarre.
Crazy. I'll be glad when it's over.
Yeah.
But well, it's been a great show. I try to remain open to the past life stuff, but sometimes when I first hear past lives, I kind of roll my eyes a little. But I think there's some truth to it. I try to look at it from a Buddhist point of view. I don't think maybe we come back as caterpillars or anything, but or dogs or whatever. But it gets weird. But I mean, there's some goofy stuff to it. But I think there's some truth to it. They seem nice and modest about it, but you don't really know until you're doing it, really. So I guess, I mean, I still think this is forced. It's like this is Earth is babysitting, and they make you come here. It's like we don't know where else to put you.
I tend to not believe that it's forced, but I will agree. It's kind of like, I mean, this is why I like the Seth material. What Seth basically says about the conditions of the world is that the world was not intended initially when you know, consciousness sort of puts things together to create it. It was intended as a teaching place, but it wasn't intended to be as harsh as it is. Yeah. And that to a large degree, the focus of the type of consciousness that human consciousness developed, that kind of tight focus that we have, is one of the unfortunate side effects of that is the type of difficult world that we have.
Yeah, seems more painful for sure lately.
Yeah.
But all right, well, thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Have a good time in Albany.
I will.
And I'll see y'all later. Have a good weekend. Good night, everybody. Peace out.